Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome, Jazakallah khair. Really appreciate everyone for taking the time to join this live workshop where we will all engage and share insights and support each other on this journey of healthcare as we approach the month of Ramadan. We ask Allah SWT to allow us to reach the blessed month of Ramadan and to bless us in this month of Sha'ban. We ask Allah SWT to put barakah in this session. So as we've started all of our prior webinars, inshallah, we'll start with listening to the Quran.
شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصمه ومن كان مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر يريد الله بكم اليسر ولا يريد بكم العسر ولتكملوا العدة ولتكبروا الله على ما هداكم ولعلكم تشكرون.
Okay. So this ayah that we just listened to, obviously, is a very famous ayah where Allah SWT mentioned Ramadan in the Quran, the only month of the Islamic calendar that was mentioned in the Quran, to honor the blessed month. But to slow down to why we're here, ultimately in Ramadan, we all know the reason. Allah SWT said in this ayah, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. That all you who have believed, Allah has decreed fasting upon us so that we may become righteous. In other translations, so that we may become more conscious of Allah, so that we may become more mindful of Allah. And I think it's really important as healthcare professionals to slow down to this ayah and what Allah is calling us to. Allah is not calling us to the checklist that we often focus on. So we often compare ourselves to others, right? We want to finish Khatam of Quran. We want to finish, we want to complete every single Tarawih in the masjid. Those things are a means to the ultimate end of taqwa, which is what Allah SWT is calling us to. But they are not in itself the end of what our pursuit should be in Ramadan. And for busy professionals in healthcare, I think that's a really important concept to hold on to, because alhamdulillah, I've been doing this for about 3 years now, and almost every year there's a conversation I have in Ramadan with a colleague who is feeling so bad because they go and they're on call. So maybe they make it to Isha and they pray maybe 2 rakas or 4 rakas of Taraweeh and then they leave and they're feeling so bad, right? I think it's human to feel bad, but then we have to ground ourselves in the reality of what Allah SWT is calling us to. That longing to want to stay longer in itself is a sense of a longing for Allah SWT, which is something that's really, when the scholars explain it, it's something that's truly is very special. But we want to avoid this whole idea of comparing ourselves because our situations are different. In fact, every day of Ramadan for each and every one of us is going to be different. And so latching on to this idea of seeking taqwa specifically is going to be important as we further along this conversation, inshallah. And then the other key thing is that the days in Ramadan are limited. Ayyam al-ma'dudat, right? We only have 29 or 30 days. So yes, we're slowing down to taqwa and not just the checklist that we always create for ourselves. But there has to be a sense of urgency. There has to be a preparation, as alhamdulillah we're having this conversation today, but there also has to be that urgency to get the most out of the month. But the most out of the month that we want to get, obviously, is centered around the concept of taqwa. And then to achieve Allah SWT forgiveness and Jannah by the end of the month. And in this third ayah that follows after that one, the key thing I want us to pause and think about is, as Allah SWT is mentioned in the month of Ramadan, He also goes on to say that Allah intends for you ease and He does not intend for you hardship. And it's interesting, right? We're talking about the month of Ramadan where we're all going super hard. But then Allah SWT is talking about that He does not intend hardship for us. So we should do this with the mindset that we want to achieve taqwa through all the means that's at our disposal. Some of that means is directly through our work. Some of that means is through the rituals of worship, through the salah, the tarbiyah, the Quran, the tilawat of Quran that we will be doing. But those are not the only means. I think we often forget that Allah SWT has also placed us in a station of work to serve humanity, and by so doing, earn His pleasure and find Allah even through our work. And that's one of the key messages that I want all of us to consider today. So that's just by way of introduction. I won't spend too much time on this because I think many of you are familiar with our work at Sakina Growth Company and the Sakina MD community. Our work is essentially bridging healthcare excellence with faith, resilience, and lasting impact. And we do that through webinars, coaching, leadership training, and all related avenues. And then we have the newsletter and our WhatsApp community. So with that introduction, I want us to just really ground ourselves in why we're here. We're here because we want the best out of Ramadan. And we want the best, inshallah, in this 90 minutes that we're going to spend together. And we want to do a conscious Bismillah, remembering that without Allah SWT's name being mentioned with anything, there's no way that we can attract barakah to that opportunity. So let's take a moment to say a conscious Bismillah. And we ask Allah SWT to put barakah in this session for all of us. So when we think about our reality as healthcare workers, we have lofty aspirations for Ramadan, right? We want our prayers to be more focused. We want more time with the Quran. We want a month that will end up being transformed by. But our work doesn't relent for many people, right? The clinical rounds, those that have leadership responsibility, family doesn't pause, the logistics of life, all of that piles up, right? And this creates a gap, especially if we don't prepare. Because to truly prepare for Ramadan is to make space for it. But because we're in an essential service, sometimes that's difficult to do. Or maybe we're in school, maybe we're medical students, or we're in training, we're residency, fellowship. The reality of making space is more difficult. But then as you become an attending, or you're, more established in your role in healthcare as a nurse, a pharmacist, a dental surgeon, you may be able to look at your schedule and say you can make some space. It may not be the lofty space that some people take the whole month off. And I was trying to allow all of us to get to that stage, or at least the last 10 days, right? But we need to all make some space to be able to get to what is meaningful and what is transformative in terms of Ramadan, because that is part of the preparation. When we don't prepare and we don't have the right mindsets around the reality of our work, then we go in hard, just like everyone else around us, who is oftentimes, at my local masjid, I think maybe only about 10% of the Saudis are in healthcare. 70% are probably in IT. So our reality is different, but we because we're human, right? We still compare. And when we do that, it forces us to react to what's going on around us and to just go with the flow. But going with the flow is not what we're looking for. We're looking for quality, we're looking for intentionality. And that connection with Allah that is beyond, that performative type of showing up that often becomes a theme in Ramadan for too many of us. And it can also lead to guilt. That emotion in itself can slow down our capacity to do more, to be able to be more successful in the month of Ramadan. So we don't want guilt. We want a deep connection to Allah SWT that is grounded in spiritual intelligence. And when I say spiritual intelligence, there's a brother who wrote the book, 11 Leadership Qualities of Rasul Sallallahu. And one of the chapters in that book, he talked about spiritual intelligence, which is basically leveraging prophetic and Quranic wisdoms to make choices in this life that are connected to an outcome in the akhirah. What do I mean by that? So if I go to the masjid and my reality is that I'm on call, I'm in telemedicine, for example, and I'm doing a telemedicine shift in the middle of Ramadan. Ihsan for me in that moment is to fulfill the haqq of that shift. It's not to try to find a way to do that shift and be in the masjid at the same time, because I can't do that, right? That's diminishing the amana and the trust of that role in that specific moment in time. Or maybe I'm on call, right? And I'm trying to still find a way to be in the masjid. What rather I should do is fulfill the haqq of that role, do ihsan with it, ask Allah SWT for tawfiq, and serve the people that I'm taking care of to the best of my ability. And then present that to Allah SWT, asking Allah SWT to accept it. Because when there is sincerity in it and we're fulfilling the haqq, then it is something that will attract barakah. And it is something that will help us to unlock that mindfulness of Allah SWT that we're seeking in the month of Ramadan. So all to say, that mindfulness is not something that we will only see when we're in the masjid. Of course, it is easier in the masjid because there's just the social energy. Everybody's doing it. But we just cannot forget the reality of our own situations. So when we're seeking taqwa of Allah SWT in Ramadan, as healthcare professionals, as people who have often unpredictable, difficult schedules, we need to ground ourselves in the reality of where Allah SWT has placed us and that He will test us differently. For a long time, this is something that I really struggled with. But alhamdulillah, over the years, I've become more and more content with my station as a healthcare professional, and that fulfilling the haqq, fulfilling the amana, is part of my worship. And we will hear a clip where Sheikh Sulaiman actually discusses this. The other thing that can happen is our energy will slump. Because if we keep going just like everyone else, then we're not recovering, and we're just going with the flow and just hoping that we will be able to make it through till the end of the month. Oftentimes that doesn't happen. We go through a very difficult mid-Ramadan slump. And then somehow we're able to make it for the last 10 days and we kind of get something out of it. And that's not what we want. We want to be able to go through at a reasonable pace throughout the whole month and really go hard in the last 10 if we're able to make space. And if we're not able to make space in that last 10, then the space that we have, that we leverage it meaningfully in a way that is aligned with Allah SWT and this whole idea of spiritual intelligence, where we should be thinking about. Does this make sense? If this resonates, drop a 1 in the chat box. Okay, alhamdulillah. All right. And to just double down on our struggles, right? We have the struggles with our energy, which is in the survey that we did as people were signing up for this workshop. A lot of people talked about their energy. the reason that we all struggle with energy is, a lot of what we've already said is that we're going hard without really being intentional about what is, re-energizing us, what is renewing us. You know, we're just depleting ourselves. Oftentimes, sleep is the big one that gets the most hit. And then our choices around food oftentimes are not great, especially in our communities. And then, obviously, we go downhill from there. And then faith in our spirituality in Ramadan suffers. But it's not only that, right? Family relationships also suffer, and then our work suffers. One of my all-time favorite lessons about Ramadan from one of the contemporary scholars around work and worship is that in Ramadan, we should actually try our best to do more ihsan in our work. It's not the time to let go and scale back. Yes, we will make space, but in those moments that we're there, that we're present in the work, the quality should be way higher than the rest of the year. Because our sense of taqwa, as was described by, the narration about Umar radiallahu anhu, walking in that path and that you have thorns, right? And the taqwa is like avoiding those thorns. Imagine that work, our work in healthcare is that path. And ihsan is that we stay on that path as best as we can, but not getting distracted by being pulled into, conversations that we don't need to be pulled into, or by being more patient with patients and their families, or even with colleagues that may challenge us, right? And so it's an important reality for us, because when we don't manage our energy well in Ramadan, what can happen is that exhaustion, physical exhaustion, emotional exhaustion, can unmask a different side of us, that lizard brain uh, that is reactive and just doesn't support us functioning at our best selves. And that can lead to, us showing up with some different archetypes. We become overextended. We're just running on fumes. We're not caring for ourselves. Or we're in this spiritually hungry state where we're doing everything in the mosque, but everything else, is now suffering. Because we're thinking that, that should be my priority, and I don't think that I can find Allah SWT in another space. Or, maybe we're parents and we're guilt-ridden because we're depleted so much, and then we're not able to show up with our best selves at home. Or at work, we're just completely burnt out. And we want to be able to rise up to faith and line clarity. If any of these resonates with you, drop a 1 in the chat box. Now I make it easy for all of us. I can relate to all of these at different stages in my career. All right. But what we want to start to think about is this idea of barakah. And one of my favorite, definitions of barakah is that barakah is the attachment of divine goodness to a thing. And when Allah SWT attaches that barakah to a thing, it makes that thing either more stable, either longer lasting, right? Or some type of increase, and that increase may be intangible. So as healthcare professionals, we can think about it as a barakah gap model, where if we're in any of those archetypes that we just described, right, we may be mostly in the survival mode. But in Ramadan, we want to go towards barakah excellence, where we're thinking about all the opportunities for us to tap into barakah. And the classic ones are the rituals of our worship in Islam, right? Spending time with the Quran, following the Sunnah of the Rasul, praying Salawat on time, all those things attract barakah. But again, we cannot forget that doing ihsan in our work and thinking about our work and the intentions of our work in the frame of Allah SWT accepting their work as something that will also attract barakah. If not, what happens is we may be in that quiet burnout where everybody around us at work feels like this person is doing a ton of things. They're a high performer. But then deep down, there's a lot of emptiness. We don't want to be in that space, especially in Ramadan. So Ramadan is an opportunity for us to really transform into that Barakah excellence, where we're doing ihsan in all the spaces that we show up, whether it's at work or at home. The other side of the of this alignment is when somebody is similar to what we talked about on the previous slide, is that this person is really big on the ibadat, but then they're also falling back at work. So they are low performer at work, especially in the current climates, the current political climate. And if you're a visible Muslim, we definitely don't want to be in that space, because that's not being, the ambassador, the Khalifa that Allah SWT has, talked about in the Quran. And so we want to live up to that Khalifa. We want to be able to excel by doing our best across all of these spaces. And so what does that journey to Barakah look like? It's making better choices across the 4 key domains of our lives, right? So that we're waking up more energetic. And then we're able to build our days around our salah. When there's emergencies, yes, we will take care of those emergencies, and then we will take care of our salah. And that our relationships, that there's more quality, because now we have the emotional energy and we have the spiritual capacity to focus on people and to give them that full haqq. And that same type of success is how we're approaching our work as well. Ihsan. Does this make sense so far? Drop a 1 in the chat box or just react. There you go. All right. So Ramadan is an opportunity for us to, move towards Barakah excellence. It's an incredible opportunity. We ask Allah SWT to allow us to reach this month. And we don't want to miss that opportunity. And that's why we're here today, inshallah, to double down on what is the best way for us to do this. And as we continue this conversation, the big things to remember is our intention is at the core of our success in Ramadan. And the ultimate outcome that we're seeking in Ramadan, of course, is Allah SWT's forgiveness and Jannah, as we have talked about. So these two narrations come up every Ramadan. I think somebody's trying to come in. Give me 1 second. Okay, I think we're. So these narrations come up every Ramadan. They're very familiar to all of us. We ask Allah to not make us among those who do not attain forgiveness in the blessed month of Ramadan. And this hadith, the second one, is something really scary that the Rasul ﷺ was asked to say Ameen. That somebody gets to Ramadan and they miss the opportunity to earn Allah SWT's mercy, which is why preparation is key. It's truly key. And our preparation for a very successful Ramadan, to be able to thrive in Ramadan, starts with our intentions. And this concept of having a high-himmah intention, meaning that we want to aspire and be very ambitious about our intentions for Ramadan, And part of it starts with an acknowledgement of all the 4 spaces of our lives, our Deen, first of all, which is the core focus, but that faith first, that Deen first focus translates into ihsan in other areas of our lives, our work, our relationships, and especially how we take care of ourselves, because that self-care, that energy is what we need to be able to excel in all of these spaces. So when we're more present in Ramadan with the consciousness of Allah, it naturally helps us to shift our priorities. Side conversations at work that we don't need to be a part of. We need to be mindful of letting those go. We need to communicate. I think one thing we always forget is communicating with our colleagues about the month of Ramadan. Something happened to me just a week ago. I was having a conversation with one of the folks on my team, and of course, non-Muslim. And she was like, "I saw your PTO message about the last 10 days of Ramadan, and I remember we had a conversation about Ramadan last year around how we can, support you in the month of Ramadan." And I said, "Yes, thank you for reminding me. Yes, we do need to have those conversations. Frankly, most people are open to it, and not saying be a jerk about it, but I think it's worth sitting down. And if anybody needs help strategizing about having a conversation, if you're in a tight spot, um, feel free to message me, and we'll make some time to have that conversation, inshallah. But having conversation is one of the most powerful things we can do to prepare for Ramadan. Because without it, what will happen is they will have the same expectations of you, and you will have this internal frustration, and it will show. And then the ihsan in your work is going to go down the drain. And frankly, it's going to impact our ibadah. It's going to impact the emotions we carry with ourselves, to the masjid, to work, to our families, and even our own self-care. Because the emotional residue is critical. It's something that we don't really notice. It's intangible, but it's there, and it's a big part of how we show up. So communication is key. And as we're shifting our priorities and our responses and the choices that we make, right? We're hoping that inshallah this is transforming how we're doing things. So we had a conversation. Our priorities are clear to us and to those around us. And so we're now doing ihsan at work. And that's carrying over to home as well, and how we are managing ourselves. Then our chances of having a truly high-himmah, high aspiration, very transformative Ramadan increases exponentially, because now the consciousness of Allah is really what's the driving theme for everything that we're trying to do. And then we're building that muscle, not just to thrive in Ramadan, but inshallah to thrive beyond Ramadan and continue to build that muscle on that journey to Allah for the rest of our lives. Does that make sense? So let's talk about the hierarchy of intentions. Those of you who have joined us here have seen this before. The key here is to understand that our intentions, as in this hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, that our actions are judged by intentions. Sheikh Sulaiman Nadwi is the one that came up with this pyramid in his book Ethics in Islam. And he talks about that not every intention is born the same. And so, in a way of doing ihsan in our work is to really double down on that intention, and to take it from the level of just for financial worldly gains, whether you're a medical student, a pharmacist, a nurse, a physician, it doesn't matter. We all start from somewhere, usually somewhere along the lines of those bottom three intentions, hierarchy levels. Is to take it to the level where it is at least, we're in this work because it's given us spiritual contentment. Meaning that in the service of humanity, that I'm hoping that Allah SWT sees this and that He's pleased with me. But to take it a notch up, we're really doubling down on our work because we want to leverage this work to actually earn Allah SWT's success in Jannah. We ask God to make us among the people of Jannah. But at the highest level is the level of ikhlas, the level of sincerity, meaning we're doing this purely for the sake of Allah, to earn Allah SWT's pleasure and for no other reason. That doesn't mean we don't get any financial gain or worldly gain from it. That doesn't mean if you're very good, you won't get the reputation of the distinguished fellow or physician, pharmacist in the community. Actually, what it does is when that you have that faith first approach, what it does is it trickles down to everything else. Allah SWT takes care of it. Okay. Does that make sense? And there's a famous narration, I believe it's from either Imam Ahmad or Imam Malik, where he was asked, if he was to choose between going to Jannah or praying 2 rakahs at the point of death, what would he choose? And he chose to pray 2 rakahs because he said a dutiful slave knows to do what is pleasing to Allah than to choose what is pleasing to themselves. And I found that profound, right? That could mean you're super tired in Ramadan and it's iftar time and your colleague didn't show up. Maybe you're a hospitalist like I used to do. And they call you maybe 20 minutes before iftar to come and see a patient in the emergency room. And you didn't set the expectation. And your colleague has no idea that iftar is about to come. What will you do? What is most pleasing to Allah in that moment? What is easy is to tell the ER to hold that patient. Sometimes that may be the right choice. But what may be the highest standard is to take care of it and ask Allah SWT to accept it from us. And finally, of course, if you're dying of hunger, of course, get a date in, a couple of dates while you're seeing the patient or around that time. But it does change the standard that we approach the choices that we make. Does this make sense?
Two things that come to mind at this time.
So here is a minute-long talk with Sheikh Umar Suleiman. This was actually last week at the GEM Summit in Doha. So just take a listen and share your thoughts in the chat box, inshallah.
What is our purpose? You spoke about the importance of going from pain to purpose, but could you just speak about what the collective purpose is? How do you see that?
So this might sound incredibly basic, but we go back to the basics. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونِ. And I have not created man and jinn except to worship me. Our purpose is to turn our work into worship. Everything that we do, we frame it through the lens of ibadah. We are not a people that separate our lives and compartmentalize our lives. We are people that were taught that even our sleep could be worshipped, if it's for the intention to wake up energized. And so our purpose is to identify every single dimension of our lives and to seek to channel it into a form of worship, into a form of servitude to Allah SWT.
Okay, any thoughts, any comments in the chat box? Or is there any brave soul who wants to unmute themselves? Any takers? No takers? Okay. Let's keep going. So the point of, hopefully everybody was able to hear that. The message was clear, is that our work, we do need to appraise our work and really every aspect of our lives as worship. And that type of transformative thinking, that is spiritual intelligence. And that's how we want to be able to approach Ramadan so that we can get the most out of it and not limit ourselves to just the rituals of our worship. All right, so I'm going to share a handout with you guys that we will start working through together. And I will drop it in the chat box. And what I want you guys to do is to make a copy for yourselves. And we'll complete it here, inshallah. And when you're ready, go ahead and drop a 1 in the chat box, and then we'll work through that, inshallah. because we want to, we don't want this to just be all talk and we don't take something away in terms of our readiness for Ramadan. Obviously, everything we discuss won't take care of every single aspect of it, right? But hopefully it sets us in the right direction to have a successful Ramadan. So if you've opened the worksheet, drop a 1 in the chat box and you're ready to go. You made a copy for yourself. And that's just going to the file button at the top left and then clicking on make a copy for yourself. Is everyone good to go? Yes, thank you for sharing that, Starsha. Absolutely. Actively considering our work and have our mannerisms and ihsan complement as well in worship. Quality of actual acts of worship does increase. Yes, absolutely. Good to go. Okay, so let's take a few minutes to work through this worksheet together. And so as we had on that slide, what is your high-himmah intention? A successful Ramadan starts with a high-himmah, meaning a high aspiration intention. And the example we gave on the slide was to think about, think about it in the context of who you want to become, right? You want to be more present, more truthful, more patient, more grateful, more sincere. Whatever it is that you feel is an area of opportunity for yourself. Yeah, go ahead and write it down. I'll type it in. And then another key mindset for us to keep in mind is to have a gardener's mindset. And what a gardener does is they have a long-term approach. So we shouldn't limit ourselves to the beginning of Ramadan or the first few days. We have to think about the whole month of Ramadan, but also we have to think about beyond Ramadan. After Ramadan, what kind of person do I want to be? And that can be in terms of specific things that you do in addition to who you're becoming. And then let's go to the next section, which talks about my non-negotiables. And this is where we start to talk about protecting worship, which is the second layer beyond intention. And when we say anchors, it's it's explicit there, but it's for Salah, it's that one prayer that, for some it could be all 5 prayers in the masjid, for example. Maybe that's your anchor. Maybe that is possible with your schedule. Maybe there's a musalla, in the hospital or in the clinic or not too far away, and you've had a conversation with your team, right? And somebody can cover you in those times if need be. And then for Quran, what is your standard? For some people, they're going to be reading 1 juz every day. For others, it's going to be maybe 1 page, but 1 page with intentionality, connecting with the guidance, the ultimate, the deeper lessons, the reflections in those ayat. And then what dhikr or dua anchor will we have for the month of Ramadan? And then we'll go to the Barakah multipliers. As we mentioned earlier, Barakah, we attract Barakah by doing the things that are pleasing to Allah. The core essence of Barakah is that we have sincere intentions for doing things for the sake of Allah and things that are aligned with Allah SWT will and to the Sunnah of Rasul SAW. So the Salah anchor, the Quran anchor, the Dhikr, the Dua, all of those things will attract Barakah. In addition, really aligning our intentions for our work and elevating our intentions for our work, like we talked about, and asking Allah SWT to accept it and to forgive us for our shortcomings, because we will have those shortcomings. And then, of course, we will all do some charity, whatever your commitment is, and then protecting our tongues in the month of Ramadan. Of course, if there's a truly important issue that needs to be addressed, we should raise it, right, productively, not the unproductive complaining that sometimes is common, because healthcare is imperfect, has many broken systems. But we can always raise issues with honesty, with integrity, where they need to be. And that's an important aspect of the amana that we carry. And then protecting sleep, with wudu, and dhikr and dua. So choose the ones that feel or resonate with you. And if you have other ones that you want to kind of focus on, feel free to put those in there. And then our healthcare work reality, right? What is your reality? I think there are some medical students here. We have some dental surgeons. We have some pharmacists. We have some physicians, some fellows, residents. What is your reality? And how can you make space for Ramadan? Think about that for a minute. Some of you may have already had those conversations and you already have space for Ramadan. We absolutely have to make space for it. That space may be 1 hour. For some, it's 10 days. But what is your reality? And ask Allah SWT to accept that reality and help you to do ihsan with that reality. That is the spiritual, intelligent, healthcare worker perspective. It's not to force things that will break us instead of build us. And then what is your dua that you will make? And that dua may be that you want more space in future Ramadans because this year maybe it wasn't possible. Or it may be something, personal situation. It may be for the people of Gaza or Sudan, whatever it is. Think about it and commit to it. Allah SWT is the pain and suffering of our brothers and sisters in Sudan, in Gaza, and all the places across the globe where Muslims are suffering. And we're going to go deeper with this if-then plan. The key thing is to think about some impossible days, and they will come. It may be a night shift. Some of you work nights. It may be call. It may not even be at work. It may be a situation at home. If that happens, how will you pick yourself back up? And what research has shown is those who have a plan for how they pick themselves back up, how they recover, almost always do better. And that's why we're slowing down to have a plan for that. So, for example, when I used to do a lot of night shifts, I made sure that this was when I was still living by myself, of course, that I had blinders on the, dark room type of curtains, made sure that it was quiet and the temperature was optimal so that I could be well rested. And then I could maximize my obligatory acts of prayer and be fully recovered by that time before I go back to the next night shift. But without a plan, all that falls apart. We end up in the Ramadan slump much sooner than even the middle 10 days. And ultimately, we want to choose consistency over intensity. What can we realistically commit to? And if you're the calendar type, you want to put your commitments on your calendar so that it's clear, or at least have this document or a similar planning sheet in an easily accessible location. What I tend to do is I have a Ramadan journal that I've kept for the last few years, because I learn every Ramadan on what to do differently and what to do better and what's not working that I need to let go. So that's another thing you could do, inshallah. Okay, how's everyone doing? If you're done, go ahead and drop a 1 in the chat box. If you have a question, let me know. Yeah? We good? Okay, I see a thumbs up. Okay. So we will continue, inshallah. All right. Okay, inshallah. No problem, Yusuf. I'll make it easy. Jazakallah khair for joining from work. Yeah, several colleagues today said they were at work as well, and ask Allah SWT to make it easy for everyone. All right, so having set our intentions and kind of clarified where we want to be in the month of Ramadan, we want to also be clear in our mind about our Ramadan Compass. So there are 3 anchors that we propose. One is that we're protecting our worship, which is why that second question after intention was about, our specific acts of worship. And stabilizing on energy is the second one. We've talked about this multiple times already. And then the third one is serving with presence, showing up fully for patients, families, and ourselves, so that we're not in the month of Ramadan depleted. There's a lot in this area of protecting worship, stabilizing energy, and serving with presence. The key message is to have a plan and to really hone in on what works for you. Right? We all know these things. They're not really rocket science. And then as we further along this conversation, what I also want us to think about is that we're going to have days maybe where we're going to have some off days in Ramadan, right? We should have a plan for optimizing those days, because otherwise the fatigue of recovering from work may just completely take over, right? So I'm not saying don't plan to recover, but make sure that your recovery plan, part of it includes things that bring barakah. Making time to spend more time with Quran, for example. Maybe on work days, maybe you can't do Tarawih, and that's completely fine because Allah SWT said in a Hadith Qudsi that a slave comes closest to him by prioritizing the obligatory acts. And then we can come closer to Allah with more voluntary acts. But Tarawih is not obligatory. And the Rasul ﷺ only prayed Tarawih 3 times in the masjid, right? So we can even do it at home. We can, like, especially like the ladies sometimes who have kids, we can, that FOMO of missing out can really take over and make us feel really bad in Ramadan. But the reality is, it doesn't have to. And that's where spiritual intelligence comes in and latching into the things that give us hope. Islam is a deen that really practices hope. When Rasulullah talked to people, he gave them hope. And that's what we want to focus on, is the spiritual intelligence, not the one that tells us to be lazy and to just take a back seat, but one that gives us that middle balanced approach, right? And then we're going to have days where we just have to lean on the anchors, right? The floor kind of analogy, meaning that our baseline. And there's another hadith where the Rasul talks about that for every ibadah, there's a period of zeal. So you can think of Ramadan in terms of zeal on your off days. But then there's also a period of slackening, either because we're tired or because it's just, work is priority. But ihsan in doing my work in those days, right, is also worship, as we've already discussed. So thank you guys for engaging in that. And let's keep pushing through, inshallah. All right, so I shared a couple of handouts. We won't have time to work through those, but feel free to open those, make a copy for yourself. It's basically talking through, thinking about the different types of days that you may have. Again, having a plan is always going to trump not having a plan. So if if you have clinic, how are you going to manage clinic so that that day in Ramadan, you will still get the most out of it? If you're rounding, if you have a lot of meetings like some of us, or if you're working some night shifts, and then like we talked about, the days that you're off. So feel free to open that and then work on it, inshallah, in your spare time. This is just some highlights from that worksheet. And then comes the mid-Ramadan slump, the famous mid-Ramadan slump. If you've been through this before, drop a 1 in the chat box. For some people, it starts much earlier than day 12, maybe day 7, maybe day 10. You're just tired. Man, this is a fantastic group. None of us has gone through mid-Ramadan slump, mashallah. Okay. That's great. If we haven't experienced that, I think the vast majority of the ummah goes through this, and it's because, oftentimes there's no preparation. We just hit Ramadan running and we go with the flow, and then our body quits. Ask Allah SWT to protect us from this. So these are the things that tend to do that. That's why we're thinking about our own planning, the sleep drift, the emotional residue that we're carrying, unhealthy food choices, schedule creep, and then drift in worship because of guilt. And these are some things that you should consider in your recovery plan. One key thing to note is there's this concept of avoiding the second mistake. So if you enter into the Ramadan slump, day 1 of your slump, you don't want day 2 to be the same. You want to pick yourself back up as quickly as possible. So if you need to take an early night, pray your Fard prayer, Isha, go to sleep. You're going to thank yourself for it, because then you will be able to get more out of the rest of the week or the rest of that portion of Ramadan, and inshallah build up strong towards the last 10 days. Have a minimum baseline, as we've talked about. And then leverage the sunlight to reset your circadian rhythm, especially in the mornings before 8:30 a.m. That sunlight has been shown to be very powerful in getting us going. Of course, food choices, sadaqah, istighfar, all those things are really important. And a question, that we should all think about is, the 4 key areas of a flourishing life in our Deen, area of work, health, and Ramadan. Which one typically takes a hit in Ramadan? And how will you protect that garden? Think about that for a minute. For some people, it's work. For others, for many, it's often health. From the feedback survey we got, it was a combination of fatigue and then balancing work with worship. Okay. So take that home with you, inshallah, and be sure to have a plan for that garden so that what happened last year doesn't repeat itself. Everyone good? Have a plan? Drop a 1 in the chat box, inshallah. All right. Okay. Oh, now the ones are flowing. Okay, so as we're getting closer to the end of the workshop, alhamdulillah, just wanted to share with you guys what we have for Sakina MD community and anyone else who is interested. So over the last couple of years, we've done kind of weekly Ramadan check-ins. So we gather together like this and we remind ourselves, we share inspiring stories, we share struggles, and we help each other course correct. Because our community is unique, and so we don't want to run this alone. We don't want to go this alone. The power of the Jama'ah. So this is our schedule, inshallah. Of course, we will share all of these resources. So every Sunday, except for the Sunday in the last 10 nights, where we will also be focusing on i'tikaf and really doubling down on maximizing, worship in those last 10 days. But we will definitely, inshallah, work together to set things up for success. Okay. And then, any questions about this? Nope. Okay. All right. So we still have a few minutes, so I'll just get your permission, inshallah, to talk about the year-long program that we have in the Sakina MD ecosystem. If that's okay with everyone, inshallah, we'll just share some details about that. Go. Okay. All right. So the Resilient Healthcare Worker Program, the other name of Elevated Barakah, is a group coaching experience that helps Muslim healthcare professionals realign their work, elevate their performance, and embody spiritual resilience. So it's a unique program that we offer, alhamdulillah, to the Muslim healthcare professional community. And we've had our first cohort for about 6 months now. Alhamdulillah, we're opening doors for the second cohort, which is why we're sharing this. The program at the Egg Alliance involves 2 group coaching sessions a month and an additional implementation sessions or working sessions in a community of like-hearted folks, faith-aligned, and then we go through different modules. The starter module, the foundational module, is this Barakah activation phase where we go through becoming the best version of yourself, spirituality on your best self, how to master your energy and for peak performance at work and in life, how to conquer distractions. Distractions have become a huge, huge problem for all of us, not just in healthcare, really for everyone. But we do have unique challenges in healthcare related to that. And then we look at how to optimize our time for peak performance, especially across all of our roles, not just our roles as healthcare professionals, and then how to build habits and routines for lasting resilience. And with, the Elevate framework is, how we've designed the program, alhamdulillah. That initial 3 months is focused on that establishing that Barakah foundations. The whole idea of Barakah is to be able to do more with less. And for healthcare professionals with the heavy load that we all carry, this is crucially important. So that gives the foundation. And then we go through the next 6 months, which is the sprints that we do, looking at different areas of our lives. Like we just did the 4 garden check. We look at Deen and spiritual mastery in the first sprint. The second sprint looks at work. The third one looks at managing ourselves, energy, health. The fourth one looks at our relationships. And these, we can, each individual typically goes through this in a different order, depending on what's going on in life for them. But the key thing is to not leave any domain of life, unaddressed by the end of this program, inshallah. And then in the last 3 months, what we do is to focus on the mastery of Barakah. We go deep into the Barakah Effect book that Muhammad Faris wrote. We solidify habits, routines, we master course correction and build autonomy. Because we want, everyone who goes through this program, inshallah, to be, much further along than when, where they started. And it's, at the core of it, it's a 12-month support system, right? Coaching and mentoring, we pretty much meet every week. Alternate weekly, we do the live coaching sessions, and then we do the working sessions on the opposite weeks. And then you have that community aspect of it, and additional resources to continue to support the individual. And there are 2 ways to join, inshallah. There's the core cohort, where we have 10 seats, inshallah, which has everything that we've already talked about. And then we have the guided integration track, which has additional structured check-ins, 2 of those, and then, frequent implementation reviews, so that they're not too far along. And here are some dates to keep in mind in terms of when this second cohort is going to start. So I'll share with you a Ramadan offer, or a pre-Ramadan offer that we actually have. And then the enrollment closes on the 27th of March or the 8th of Shawwal. Onboarding session for the second cohort will start on the 29th of March, inshallah, the 10th of Shawwal. And then the 17th of Shawwal is when, there will be that first group coaching session. Here is a testimonial from Dr. Zahra, who took a similar program with us a couple of years ago now, I think. And then let me see if Omar is here, or Dantana, any of our current cohorts, if they can share. Let's see who's in the room. Omar is here. Okay. Omar, Zahra here for joining.
Yes, I just flew into Tennessee, so I wanted to catch the tail end. Do not want to miss these, so I'm glad I was to make it in. So just wanted to share with the new people who are joining in, that alhamdulillah, I've been on I think I'm midway through 6 months into a 1-year program now, alhamdulillah. And by way of background, 20 years practicing physician, I've done a lot of other leadership courses, healthcare executive courses and stuff, and there was always a misalignment and a lot of burnout, even a sense of moral injury. And I've done the Barakah, I've even done the Barakah, one of the Barakah Effect courses and stuff, but what I found consistently for myself was that unless I was actually in a cohort-based program where I had both the advantage of one-on-one coaching and then a very small, like-minded, selectively chosen group of people, I wasn't having progress. So, intellectually, I would understand all of these things, but they wouldn't show up into a transformation in my life. And so, alhamdulillah, I mean, I can share my cell phone or email. I'd be very happy to speak with people offline on what my experience has been. And initially, when I came in, I was talking to Brother Suleiman that I felt like I was 10 years late in joining something like this. And it was a really good reframing that, Allah places us at a time of His choosing, alhamdulillah, when we're ready to receive guidance and ready to, elevate ourselves and stuff. So, this is a program I believe in so much that I think it should be required for Muslim medical students starting in their program rather than old geezers like me who are like 20 years out and then trying to catch up. So, alhamdulillah, could not speak highly enough of the program and would encourage, there really is, to me personally, self-study versus cohort, small group coaching. It's a completely different experience. And one other thing that I wanted to end with real quickly was that I haven't found a course that balances Deen and Dunya at a highly professional level. So, we've got like the scientific peak performance principles from a Western philosophy point of view or scientific point of view, aligned with an Abd of Allah orientation and informing how the Barakah effect kind of infuses both. And alhamdulillah, in our small groups, our check-ins, we all share how surprisingly the Barakah effect shows up in places where we weren't even thinking in between our weekly check-ins. So that's my high-level pitch for the program. Don't hesitate, just sign up, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair, Omar. Very humbling words. May Allah SWT accept from you and from all of us. All right. So here is a quick summary of what you'll gain. Omar has already actually spoken deeper than this, but it's a high-performance lifestyle grounded in faith, which we often struggle with in healthcare because of the load that we're carrying. Clarity on priorities and purpose, systems that support big priorities in our lives, our families, our energy, our worship, and then the coaching support as well as the community. And of course, there's an investment tied to this, and the core track is currently at $875 a month, and the guided integration track is $1,125 a month. And the best value, obviously, is to try to do this upfront, but if folks are struggling with this, or if there's any challenges, we have a limited number of scholarship opportunities that are available, especially for trainees. One thing Omar mentioned there is that this should be required, very humbling, but I do think that it's something I wish I had when I was in those early stages of my career, when I was really struggling with my Muslim identity. So don't let these numbers get in your way. If it's something that resonates with you, you're inclined towards, reach out, let's have a conversation. We can very likely make it work, as we've done for others in the past, alhamdulillah. All right, and there's the bundle that comes with this is that there's a 12-month access to the program recordings, 12 months beyond when you finish the program, future discounts, 25% for the future, and then we have the added benefit of getting access to this healthcare professional seed planting workshop. And then there's a gift, a coaching book, and a Barakah journal, inshallah. And this is not for everyone. I think one thing Omar mentioned there is how he resonates with kind of the structure. So for somebody who is craving that deeper alignment, sustainable transformation, not the rapid transformation overnight kind of thing, where we have the Ramadan identity, and then we have the post-Ramadan identity where everything crashes and disappears and we're almost a shadow of ourselves. That's not what this program is about. This is for sustained, we want to build momentum from Ramadan to Ramadan, inshallah. And sometimes we need that extra support in between Ramadan to be able to sustain that. And for folks who may have some questions, here are a few frequently asked questions. It is faith-based. Omar has mentioned that. You may not be burnt out, but it can absolutely help to get you to function at a much deeper, higher level. And yes, professional development funds or CME can be used, and it is a safe group. It's a high trust container, inshallah. And in terms of next steps, Omar said, just sign up. I will caveat that and say, anyone who wants to sign up, I do want to have a conversation just to make sure that it is absolutely a right fit. So what I would recommend is book a clarity call. Earlier in our conversation today, I said if anyone wants opportunity to talk about having a conversation about Ramadan, feel free to book a clarity call. Or you just want even get clarity on some of the challenges that you may be having that's not related to this program, feel free to book a clarity call. And then for some, maybe this is not the optimal time and they just want to join our wait list. There is that other QR code as well. So what will we cover on the call? Anything you're struggling with that we can support, what success looks like, between this Ramadan and inshallah the next one, any barriers to consistency, if this is a right fit as I mentioned, and it is just a clarity call. There is no strings attached. And by way of a final reflection, there's this hadith or this narration from Anas ibn Malik, the Rasul said that even if the resurrection were established upon one of you while he has in his hand a sapling, let him plant it. And what the Rasul is highlighting to us here is that at every given moment, we have the opportunity to plant a seed that can be transformative. Because setting that intention, planting that seed today, we never know where it will take us or what the implications of that seed may be on the day of resurrection. We should never underestimate planting a seed, whether it's a seed of a good word, a charity, an intention for transformation. Plant it. Don't let your nafs, don't let shaitan hold you back. Plant that seed, and inshallah, you will see the fruits of it in this life or in the next. And in the Quran, I believe in Surah Waqiyah, Allah SWT challenged us that when we plant seeds, are we the ones who grow that seed? And that is the foundation of the gardener's mindset. In the follow-up ayah, Allah SWT said, we are the growers of that seed. Right? In the explanation of that ayah, that we are the growers of that seed. So our job is to plant the seed. Don't worry about how the seed will grow. Even if it's in the last moments of our lives, like when the day of resurrection is being established. So we will stop here, inshallah. We ask Allah SWT to accept from us, from you all. Jazakumullahu khairan, everyone. And look forward to connecting with you guys in future sessions, inshallah. If anyone has any questions, feel free to jump in. Oh, I missed this. This was the Ramadan early commitment bonus. So for the early commitment bonus, I shared it on the prior slide. We are offering at a huge discount of total of $9,000, I believe. I will pivot to that slide and look at it again so that you guys have the exact picture. But it ends right before Ramadan starts. That's the only caveat. Okay, so we will share the resources. I hope those worksheets are useful for you guys and that this session was helpful. If there are no further questions, thoughts, we can, inshallah, call it a day. And we will meet again next weekend. We'll send an invite to all of you guys to join us for the Ramadan check-ins, inshallah. All right. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك جزاكم الله خيرا السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Jazakallah khair. Alaykum salam.
Wa yakum. Assalamu alaikum.
السلام عليكم.